It's time now for the K.C. Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's K.C. Ingram.
Tired of lines at the boat launch, sun damage, or not using your boat because of the hassle? Call Meridian Marina and Yacht Club because we do all the work so you can enjoy your boating lifestyle. We store your boat inside, launch it with a wash with just 30 minutes notice, and rinse it down before putting it back. We do the work so you can enjoy your day out on the water. Call us up at 772-221-8198 or visit us online at meridianmarina.com for more information. I also want to remind everybody you can sign up for a weekly notification of who the special guest or guest will be in the studio this week, and you can do that at my website, thekcingrahamshow.com. If you don't see the email, check your spam folder. Sometimes it ends up there. Finally, Stewart Downtown Auctions. Love auctions, so do we. Auctions are a great way to get a good deal and see items that you never knew you even wanted. Come explore our inventory of estate items and bid on your treasure and leave with a fun memory. Have items laying around taking up space that you just don't want anymore? We have a solution. Call the Stewart Downtown Auction to have your items picked up and sold at auction, and the proceeds can then be distributed back to you or a local charity. We have the bidders that want your items. When you are serious about selling, so are we. Associate Auctions and Stewart Downtown Auction provide a complete solution to real estate and personal property assets throughout the Treasure Coast. Real auctions, real results. Associate Auctions and Stewart Downtown Auctions with K.C. Daniel, auctioneer. Call them up at 772-291-2806. Again, that's 291-2806. So in the studio this evening, we have a double header again to kind of catch up for all the time I was off air with COVID. Not that I had COVID, but because of COVID. We're going to have the City of Stewart Commission race, and I believe is it one? Group 3. Thank you. Group 3. I need to write that down. And first, we're going to have basically the challenger, Ed Gallant, here. And Ed, I really appreciate you coming in this evening. It's really great to get to know you. And first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you jumped into this race.
Well, I'm a lawyer for 45 years, graduated at the University of Miami, taught at the University of Miami Law School for a little bit. I have a bachelor's degree in business, I have a master's degree in business. I've been living in the city of Stewart for, I'd say, the last 8 to 10 years, but I've lived in Martin County for the last 38 years. And I've been practicing law in Stewart for 38 years. So I'm part of Stewart. And why I wanted to become a city commissioner, it's kind of straightforward. I've watched them change downtown, and I didn't like what they did. And you can sit and bitch about it, or you can do something about it. And then as I learned more and more about what's going on in our city, I know they're spending a bunch of money we don't have. I know that they're committing to certain things based upon hope and a prayer, which is not the way to go about conducting a multi-million-dollar business. I think my background in the business and law will help greatly because they need that kind of insight in the future. And I would also love to see, much like Joan Jefferson, I don't know if you recall Joan Jefferson, but she was perhaps one of the most instrumental people in making Stewart what it is today. And she had a plan with a fellow by the name of Dwani. And I think the plan is somewhere in City Hall, but nobody has seen it in years. But I would love to see Stewart project out to 2040. What plan could we possibly have? What vision? And just work towards that, as opposed to this knee-jerk reaction to so many things that come up. There's no planning. There's no vision. There's no putting it all together and staying on course, if you will, over a period of time. And if we don't do that, then what we're going to wind up with is a city of the new Berlin Wall that we have up here off of US 1.
I was going to talk about that.
Which is an absolute travesty. It's a concrete monster. And we're going to have more and more of those simply because people are pointing to the comp plan and saying, oh, we can't do anything about it. That's not true. The comp plan was written, it can be unwritten, and it can be written so that we develop a city that we can be proud of 20 years from now. So
Ed's referring to the new CubeSmart building you'll see on US 1. It's quite shocking, actually, when you come around the corner, and you're right, it's a great big gray monstrosity at the moment. It's just, it does not fit in with the rest of Stewart whatsoever.
And it sits in the middle of a neighborhood. I took time to walk around, walk around. There's no buffer between a private residence and the wall of this particular structure. It's a 4-story structure. It's Stewart's New Berlin Wall.
I couldn't imagine being that neighbor. You had a beautiful, it was a smaller business there, a lot of green space there before. And yes, I'm one of those people that was very shocked. So certainly you're one of the first candidates that have come through here. I interview a lot of candidates, but you're one of the first ones that I can recall that has talked about, let's think about long-term, let's think about the future. And that's so important with the population that's coming to Florida. It's close to 1,000 people a day.
Yes.
So obviously we need to accommodate for those things, and the population is only going to continue on. So we do need to think about our growth here in the city of Stewart and what we want it to look like in 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, regrettably, our commission has passed several multi-story rentals. We're talking 4-story rentals with 212 units, 324 units. Not that anything is against a rental, but in the middle of a single family subdivision or immediately adjacent to it with one road in and one road out. That's the one north of Baker Road and south of Britt Road.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made of wood. And people tell me, oh no, we got an engineer that says it's a stand up in a hurricane. God bless you. Maybe, maybe not. I do know that wood burns like crazy, and I'm told, oh, don't worry about it. We have a sprinkler system. Well, when the mechanical system fails, what are we going to do with the poor people up on the 4th floor? Because I don't know that Stewart actually has a hook and ladder that can go up 4 stories, and we have people trained to handle a high pressure hose 4 stories in the air. And now we're talking about saving life. And not just property heck, but the lives that are up there. And there are going to be a lot of people on that top floor.
So you certainly are bringing in a different thought process, and that's what you want to bring to the board, is we have to have a diverse thinking on the board to think about these different issues. So with your business background, your law background, that's certainly something where you have a different angle than what's on the current board.
I think because of the training I have, like if I take over a lawsuit, I have to know my side perfectly well, and I have to know your side perfectly well. Literally, we have to be able to exchange folders, and I could try your case. I have to know it that well. But in order to do that, my training is you got to know all the little pieces parts. More recently, I read Treadwell's piece about the Calkin Water Farm.
Yes.
All right. I'm thinking to myself, I've got my opponent talking about suing the Army Corps of Engineers because of volume of water that they might or might not release, which, by the way, was a bogus stunt the whole darn time, because there's no way you bring a federal lawsuit for $2,000 and then back off of it, because that was just a stunt, a feel-good stunt for all the wrong reasons. Because when you bluff something like that, guess what? You lose credibility. But the Calkins farm has been around for a while, and if it can take 35 million gallons of water, why aren't we using it? Because that would keep the lake lower. It evaporates, I think, Tyler said it evaporates at a rate of about 96,000 gallons a day.
Incredible.
Well, that's an incredible amount of water we can take out of the lake. And also, it's probably the most polluted water.
Right.
C-44 is the most polluted water. And I'd like to see something done about that. The governor just signed a bill called the Florida Clean Waters Act, where they talk about coming up with point source discharges and monitoring those things.
Yes.
Which I did as a federal prosecutor.
Okay.
Under the Clean Water Act.
Yes.
In fact, that's how I found Stewart many years ago. I had to come up here to do some prosecutions. But the bottom line is, that's a beginning. It's not the best bill in the world, but it's a start. It's like, how do we make this bill better? For instance, why can't we make this bill so that when we have a point source discharge coming with all the fertilizers, what have you, why can't the farmers be responsible for that? Why can't we create a cause of action or standing? And it ain't going to happen today or tomorrow. But if you keep pounding the desk, I think you're going to get something, as opposed to let's let's make believe we're going to sue the Army Corps of Engineers.
Very important. You touched on something that I believe in so much, is that we need to identify the point source pollution, the source of that, and they do need to be accountable. And I'm a huge fan of Calkins Water Farm, by the way.
Yes.
It's a tremendous resource, and we're so fortunate that they have agreed to lease their land so that we can get some of that water.
Absolutely.
I want to say hi real quick. Karina Balderramos Robinson is checking in, said hello to everybody. She is running for Senate here in the district. So I want to say hi to Karina. Let's talk a little bit. What should happen to Old City Hall? Because that's a piece of property that's on the river, and City Hall is moving. So
maybe not.
Really?
Because in order to sell City Hall, you have to do a referendum.
Yes.
But the referendum fails. Now we have 2 locations. You don't plan that way. And you don't have to be a lawyer or have an MBA to figure out this may not go right. But a lot of the way the commission is moving is to spend the money and then pray to God it works out. Hope is not a plan. You need to have concrete thoughts about things and how do we get from A to B, and not just maybe something comes up. Because I asked one of the city manager, I said, what do we do? And he said, well, we bought the parcel immediately next to Wells Fargo building. I said, really? I don't know if you remember where Avocados used to be, the restaurant there. Okay, well, that's that. So, well, a developer's going to come along and he's going to buy that. Well, do you have a name? Have a phone number? Has anybody called you? Has been any bids come in? Anything? No. Well, that's hope. If you're going to have a business plan and you're going to have business and you're going to deal like you're in a business, you can't do that. You have to have that set up before you happen, because that might be as much as $1 million comes back to the city if they can sell that parcel, which will reduce the $7 million cost down to like $4.5 million or $5 million. Because right now they're fixing to borrow $5 million from Chase at 1.29% interest per year, low enough interest rate, but still, we're borrowing money. And last year they had to raise taxes, and we're borrowing money. Does this make sense to anybody? Because if they're borrowing money, why aren't they going to raise taxes again? I mean, it's just simple. It's simple math. It's not even rocket science.
Right. I mean, that certainly makes sense to plan out the new buildings. I want you just to step back for 1 second, and I want you to re-explain that, because I'm not sure I caught that 100%. So they purchased the new Wells Fargo building and the lot next to it.
Yes.
They're hoping to sell the lot next to it to help pay down some of the Wells Fargo building?
Yes.
And you said they may not be moving there. Why? I mean, it's a possibility it won't happen because...
Okay. Something has to be done with City Hall.
Right.
And they'll tell you it's an antiquated building. It's no good. You can't use it. Okay, fine. But what do we do with the open space?
Right.
Is somebody going to come and buy that? Are we going to hold the land underneath it and then have somebody come in and build a convention center and a hotel? Once again, are we gonna? What's the thought process? Do we have a hard plan? The answer is no.
Okay.
And to me, that if you're a citizen of the city of Stewart, I'd be scared. They're spending money like it grows on trees, literally. And they don't have hard plans. They got hopes, they got expectations, but none of that's how you run a business.
Planning is definitely 100% important. Ed, I want to touch on another thing that's very important to the city as well, and I know it's near and dear to you. With COVID that has occurred right now, what is the city? What should the city be doing to help our local businesses, our downtown businesses that are suffering so much with COVID, and then of course the bridge there for a little while?
Oh, yeah.
It was tough on them as well.
Well, I walk around downtown a lot because my granddaughter, who's 7.5, and I've been going on dates every Wednesday night since she's 2. There isn't a proprietor of a restaurant anywhere that doesn't know her. But I go into all these stores and I ask them, what can be done? How can we help? Has anyone even come in to ask you? And generally the answer is no. And some of the answers I've received would deal with the loss of the various fairs and the little outdoor things that we used to put on. You can't do that.
Right.
So now you're going to have to really sit back and be creative in how you're going to address how you can help your businesses. We're losing Tootsie's. We're losing, there's a store just one or two doors down from them that's going out of business as well. I don't think there are a couple of restaurants I don't think are going to make it because they don't have the capital to stay in the game. Can the city loan them money? I don't believe we're in the business to loan them money, but on the other hand, is there things we could do about their taxes or things that we can do to create a greater draw to the downtown and maybe get the word out that they're in business, they've got sales going on, there's restaurants, and let us come behind them and push them so that the community knows about it, because I think most of the community will show up, even if it's to buy a takeout, to help local businesses. That's what I saw downtown.
Right.
People just showed up and they bought because, well, I didn't want to be out. I should be wearing my mask. I shouldn't be doing this or doing that. But they went out to help these businesses like Gatford and some of these others, and did pick up Luna's, help them in any way we can. I mean, but again, you have to be creative. You have to sit down and work with the businesses. What can we do for you, as opposed to us walking, here's your solution. Really? I don't run your ice cream parlor.
Right.
But you have to ask them, what do you want us to do?
Very important to involve the business owners. Kind of similar along the diverse advisory board that the commission's put together. You need to have a lot of different partners on that board.
Yes.
So to get a full scope of what is needed, it can't be just one-sided. So certainly along that same line.
Exactly. In fact, the greater the input, I've learned over the years that you learn much more by shutting up and listening and asking questions, and then taking down the data and thinking about it. Because if you don't do that, then you're the one running your mouth, and you're making up solutions that may not fit. I mean, this is a square peg in a round hole. You're not helping anybody.
Again, we're speaking with Ed Gallant. He is running for Group 3, City of Stuart Commission. And Ed, another question for you. There's a lot of government-owned, city-owned land around the city. Pelican Cafe was one that was in the news tremendously here recently.
Yes.
There was another one. It's got a car wash on it now. It used to be a gas station out on the corner of Monterey and Canner.
Yes.
And there's more properties than that. But how do you feel about government owning those properties to lease to business?
I don't believe the government's supposed to be in business to compete with private enterprise. Private enterprise will do a much better job than the government will do with the land. Besides which, even if you get an income from the land, you lose the tax ad valorem taxes, and there are wiser, better people out there than the government in handling these type of properties. And Stuart owns a lot of property, and in fact, it's shocking how much property they own. And I mean, let's go back to this Wells Fargo building.
Right.
Okay. They're going to be using CRA funds to pay down the initial down payment on the building. CRA funds are funds generated from TIF so that they get more money, they can reinvest in the community and elevate the overall value of properties so they can get more ad valorem taxes. Well, if we take the TIF money or the CRA money to put down for the Wells Fargo building, we've just taken that building off the tax rolls. So how is the CRA going to get paid back, if they're going to get paid back? The CRA fund is not a piggy bank. It's not Social Security. This isn't Congress. It's a bad business model. I mean, I'd let's say our business model is broke, but I don't think we have one. And nobody's really thought about this to try to put it in a proper perspective for a long, long time. We're just going along doing what we used to do. Well, what we used to do isn't going to work.
Well, it sounds like every time one of these leases comes up, that's the time we have to decide, are we going to sell this parcel or release it? And that's where your long-term planning that you spoke about at the beginning of the show really comes into play.
Absolutely.
If you have a long-term of what we need to do, this lease is going to come up in 20 years. What then?
What then?
So a long-term plan, instead of, as you said, flying by the seat of your pants, or I might have said that, but basically what you said, making a decision today for today's environment, not thinking ahead of what that property should be in 20 years from now.
Right.
So,
and how is it going to fit into the overall scheme of what you want Stuart to look like?
Right.
Stuart is a wonderful little community. Stewart is a type of place that people come to because it has a certain charm and a community that knows one another. You may not know everybody by name, but you know them by sight, and you wave, you say hi. It's a friendly place. And I think we're going to be losing that, particularly when you've got 1,600 rental units in the last 2 years that have been approved. Nothing against renters, but on the other hand, they're not stakeholders either. And you lose something there. And do people need places to rent? Yes. Can all people afford homes? No. But are there other programs that the city could be looking into, like SHIP grants and things like that, to foster and first-time ownership of properties? Yeah. Why don't we get in that business and help our citizens that way? The people who can't afford things. I mean, it seems like they're flying by the seat of their pants in a lot of ways. And like, as it works, maybe it works. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. Well, that's not how you run a business. Not if you're going to be successful.
I think, speaking with you, I have a pretty darn good idea, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway. What would you like the city to look like in 20 years?
I'd love to see the city actually push out to US 1. No more than 2-story buildings. I'd love to see a parking garage at some point in time, because guess what? Say what you will, we will need one in time. I'd love to see the city push down to the Wells Fargo building, and expand Osceola that way, and just incorporate more into the city itself, and bring in more restaurants, bring in more places where people can go shop. We've got a heck of the little trams. They're great for getting things around. I love Marty. I mean, one night my granddaughter and I were in the park over by what do they call themselves? Kiwanis Park.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Can we go on that, Papa?" I said, "Sure." So she says, "Where does it go?" "I don't know, but I think it'll come back here by the time we're done." And we took a ride. I'm thinking to myself, this is a great little idea, and we need to do a little bit more public transportation like that and make it a whole lot more friendly. And I think we could use that to make our town consistent with the way it looks now, a little bit more modern, and a whole lot more friendly, and more things to do, which would attract more people here, get more sales taxes this way, make it a more desirable place to live, people to invest their money. And again, I don't think the city should be owning the property, but let's bring in private industry so they can develop this idea, this scheme.
And that's really how you keep a downtown alive and vibrant, is you do bring new blood in, you bring people in. There are some new developments that have come in. There's one on the river that are, I think they're $1 million plus.
Yes.
Condominium units. And there's something over here just by the studio. I think it's called Blue. It's right across the street almost. The condo unit. I can't think. I'm having a mental blank, but they're right here. New condominiums going up.
Gotcha.
And people are moving into them. But bringing those kind of buildings downtown, like a condo type unit, brings people that can walk to the stores and walk to the restaurants and keep
that's
the
what
city
you want.
alive.
That's what you want to encourage. You want this to be a walking town. You don't want it to be so large. I mean, I'd love to see awnings downtown to protect us from the rain, to protect us from the sun. I'd love this to become much more of like a walking town. You want to go across the railroad tracks? Let's figure a way out that you can go across the railroad tracks, even if it's by tram or what have you, so that you can get to the other side. I know that they just approved a art and entertainment district going in the direction I'm talking about. Well, now that you've approved it, what in God's name is it going to look like, and who are you going to try to attract to come in and do these particular things? I mean, I understand now there's a small jazz club, and I'm going to go take a look at it. I'm going to sit down. I love jazz, so I'm going to watch it,
So do I.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, like, I want to see what it looks like. What does it feel like? Again, ask the person, what can we do to make your business better?
Again, we're speaking with Ed Gallant. He's running for City of Stewart Commission Group 3. Ed, we've got just about a minute, maybe 2 minutes left here. Why should people vote for you over your opponent?
I'm not a politician. I'm doing this because I love the city of Stewart. I mean, I believe someone's going to say, Well, he loves the river. Well, anybody that lives here loves the river. We know it's vital to our life. So that's almost a no-brainer. But the rest of the city and how the city evolves and what the city does and how we pay for it and that the type of taxes and the type of things we're going to commit ourselves to, I have an idea and a view of how it needs to be done. I also know I'm not going to be tricked, because if you bring a law in front of me, I'm going to be able to read it in great detail. If you bring me statistics, you bring me accounting, you bring me financial papers, I can read them really well too, and I can pull them apart. I just think I bring a business background that my opponent doesn't, that I think is absolutely positively necessary in order to make that vision 2040 for Stewart come a reality.
Excellent. And folks, Merritt Matheson will be in the studio next, so you'll be able to ask him questions as well and listen to him compared to Ed Gallant. And if you support Ed Gallant, he needs your help. The election's coming up August 18th. And Ed, I'm sure you have a website and Facebook and a place for people to contact you. You know.
I know. I have Facebook. I'm working on a
Smile,
website.
you're on Facebook right now. But certainly, I'm sure you're taking campaign donations. It's so tough for all of our candidates to campaign this year and get out and shake hands. So I appreciate you coming into the studio and give people a little chance to get to know who Ed Gallant is and why you're running for City of Stewart. Clearly, you're very passionate about the city and definitely want to see a clear direction for it. So
yes, thank you.
Ed Gallant, Group 3, City of Stewart Commission. Send them a check if you support them, or at least I'm sure they can contact you for questions or yard signs or any of that good stuff.
Yes. Well, I tell you, I've had over 120 of my signs removed, not from code enforcement. They have 4.
Folks,
I know.
Please, these signs cost these candidates money. That's one thing that's it's happening out there too much. It's $10 a sign. These candidates, it actually looks poorly on the candidate you support. Just leave everybody's signs in the ground and let it be fair game and let these in this case these gentlemen fight this race out on their own. Taking their signs out is not a help. So Ed Gallant, thank you so much. I wish you well and good luck with your race.
Thank you.
Tired of lines at the boat launch, sun damage, or not using your boat because of the hassle? Call Meridian Marina and Yacht Club because we do all the work so you can enjoy your boating lifestyle. We store your boat inside, launch it with a wash with just 30 minutes notice, and rinse it down before putting it back. We do the work so you can enjoy your day on the water. Call us up at 772-221-8198, 221-8198, or visit us online at meridianmarina.com. I'd like to remind everybody you can sign up for a weekly notification of who the special guest is in the studio at my website, thekcingram.show.com. And finally, Stewart Downtown Auction. Love auctions? So do we. Auctions are a great way to get a good deal and see items that you never knew you even wanted. Come explore our inventory of estate items and bid on your treasure and leave with a fun memory. When you're serious about selling, so are we. Associate Auctions and Stewart Downtown Auction provide a complete solution to real estate and personal property assets throughout the Treasure Coast. Real auctions, real results. Associate Auctions and Stewart Downtown Auction. Call K.C. Daniel, the auctioneer, at 772-291-2806, 772-291-2806. For the second half of the show, I'm very grateful to have Merritt Matheson in. He's current commissioner sitting for Group 3 in the city of Stewart. So, hi, how are you doing, Merritt?
Good.
This is wonderful. We just had your opponent on, and I appreciate you coming in because we're going to get another perspective from the current commissioner.
Absolutely.
So, how are you doing? It's been a little while since I've had you in the studio.
It's been a couple years, really.
I
I've
think
seen
since
you
you ran.
around town a lot. Not so much in the past few months or
Exactly.
so. Hope eventually we'll get back to that.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I hope one day.
I'm doing well. A lot of family time and a lot of distance time.
Yes, of course, of course. So it has been. I think the last time you were in the studio was as a candidate.
Mhm.
Tell me, how's the last couple of years been, and what are you proud of what you have accomplished so far?
It's 22 months or so. I and the commission have done a tremendous amount. When I decided to run, the city wasn't in the best of shape, frankly. We were, on our third city manager in less than 2 years, 3 different mayors in less than 2 years.
I remember.
A lot of tough decisions had been pushed forward by the prior commission. Sailfish ball fields, for example, when I got elected, was right at the bottom of the ninth, so to say. Looking back on that, we had just come out of the toxic 2018. And frankly, I ran because I thought a lot more could be done on that issue. Now I look back and the city has changed. We've got a good finance and balanced budget. Our manager is excellent, our former police chief.
David Dias,
we're not letting him go anywhere anytime soon. I think we made a great decision on him. And, our mayors have had the normal turnover, and all of them have represented the city well in that position, which is a little more of a ceremonial position. The city has really made a good solid turnaround, and for the past 2 years has been on the right direction. And, I'd like to keep that momentum going.
You've seen a lot here in the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
And certainly. I know one of the major issues you ran on was, of course, water quality.
Yep.
So what steps have we made of improvement in water quality over the last couple of years?
So one of the biggest things we've done, which seemed like a no-brainer to me when I was looking on the outside, I spent at least over a year, going to every commission meeting so I could learn and know what the commission's supposed to do, how the city's supposed to be run, not like a business, but like, a government agency meant to help and represent the people. And one of the issues on water quality that should have happened a decade ago or so was we have roughly a $27 million budget and over 250 employees, but we didn't have any one employee whose job it was to fight for our river, for river advocacy. Now we have a full-time staff member. I speak to him on a weekly basis, and he and I discuss written comments to meetings like the Army Corps, South Florida Water Management District, the Clean Water Act. All the sky's the limit on what he does, but the focus is on improving our water and working with different government agencies. That was one of the biggest accomplishments, but the main thing was just speaking up year round, having the city get involved year round, not just when there's an algae bloom. And we made headlines over the winter in raising the issue of how the lake was going to be managed. And, thankfully, it was managed differently than the proposed plan this last winter in 2020.
And you're talking about the lawsuit y'all spoke of possibly.
Yes, we basically, I, as well as, Congressman Brian Mast has said this in the past before. I'll always reserve the right to litigate on behalf of protecting the public health and safety of city residents. That's my job, is the health and safety of city residents, whether it's COVID, whether it's microcystin and harmful algae blooms in our river where people can't go outside. And so litigation, yes, is on the table. We have a full-time city attorney on staff. He's excellent. He is a great litigator, both at the state level and federally. He and I spend hours all the time discussing, potential ways we can help our residents with water quality. Now, we raised the issue of a lawsuit, and I was thankful that all 5 of my commissioners were willing to go the distance. But, stuff doesn't happen in one meeting or overnight, at any level of government. And basically, during our debates, we had a lot of meetings, and I was voted the point person. That's another thing that happened throughout this past 2-year term or so. I was voted the point person to discuss and represent the city of Stuart on water quality issues. So I went to a lot of meetings with Colonel Kelly and Savannah Lacey and Lieutenant Colonel Polk of the Army Corps of Engineers. And I attend numerous South Florida Water Management District meetings. And basically the proposed height that we were going to enter the wet season this summer was 12.5 feet. And to give you an example of the difference, in 2019, we entered the wet season at 10.8 feet. That 1.5 feet means the difference between a toxic summer like 2018 or not. That's a lot of capacity in the lake. And so historically, we had just proven, as we did in 2019, that we could last. Hurricane Dorian, after it crushed the Bahamas, which was horrible and very sad, came over Florida and dumped a tremendous amount of rain on us. But because we started the wet season with that extra capacity in the lake, we were able to absorb that rain. And we haven't had discharges out of Lake Okeechobee, out of the S80 structure in our South Fork, since February of 2019. And those discharges were in an effort to bring the lake lower. So we wanted that to happen again. And we argued for that. And we raised the potential fact of litigation. I'm so thankful that we didn't have to go down that route. Not a dime of taxpayer dollars was spent. But government is supposed to fight on behalf of the residents. And we did that. And as it turns out, instead of entering the wet season with a lake at 12.5 feet, the lowest point it got right before the official start date, June 1st, the start date of the wet season, was 11.01 feet. So we had that same extra capacity. And as I'm sure everyone out there listening knows, a few weeks into the wet season, unfortunately, major unfortunately for those that live in Hope Sound, we had record rain in Martin County. But guess what? Those locks stayed closed, and Lake Okeechobee was able to absorb that record rain again. And right now, I check every day. And actually earlier today, I was on a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they spoke about it. They don't foresee any need to open those locks at the current state. And the lake sits at 12 feet, 7 inches. But the historical average is a foot higher than that in the past 30 years.
Merritt, I definitely appreciate your advocacy of all the discharges in a lot of different ways. So we can't control where it's coming from. We can't,
K.C, we're the toilet bowl. Put it simply. And we need to stand up.
We are. And you said something very important when you were speaking, and that is that you're trying to have a voice for the river year round, not just when there's discharges. And traditionally that's happened so many times over the years, is when there's no discharges, people forget about it. The voices go away. So this is so important to have a voice, and you have somebody that is a full-time person that advocates for the river. So
exactly.
We need that here in Stuart.
And that's in my heart and blood. I grew up on the South Fork. I had my captain's license as the earliest age possible. Basically, I was a mate in high school the second I could drive, even before that, and was a charter captain for years. I consider myself, and as do many others, a waterman.
I have some other things I want to ask you, but I want to ask you also on the river. The other issue that is, again, it's not our control because we're not the source of the pollution, but the local runoff. The quality of our river has improved tremendously because we haven't had discharges, but we still have all these bacteria where our sandbar gets shut down, our parks and beaches are shut down. So,
K.C. So what'll happen if we can, as years go by, if we're more and more successful, hopefully, at stopping the discharges, our river, just like your immune system in your body, will recover. And we need to keep on fighting for that. So the more seagrass we have, the more live oysters we have, the more filtration that Mother Nature can provide with those organisms. But basically, it's going to be an uphill battle for years. We have what's called legacy muck. All the discharges for 30, 40 years coming out of the S80 structure, the locks, has been dumped upon us. And that muck is loaded with nitrogen and phosphorus. So it's there. So when we get record rain like we had a few weeks ago, the river FOS grades it on a weekly basis. And it went from a B+ to a D+. That legacy muck gets stirred up and that nitrogen and phosphorus gets released. So the longer we can go, though, many of us, I hope, got to go out to the sandbar. I know I did kind of during lockdown. We socially distanced, but my daughters were finding queen conch.
yes.
Baby queen conch, and seeing schools of bonefish at the crystal clear water before all that rain. And seagrass beds are coming back. All of that is the river's natural immune system, and we need to fight for that. So when that legacy muck gets stirred up, we can absorb it. But that is basically phase 2. And I hate to say it, but that's going to be after stopping all the discharges. And I and others have raised this issue with the Corps. The legacy muck needs to be addressed. Now, what can City of Stuart do locally? Well, this year, we were on a 10-year plan to convert over from septic to sewer. We're going to finish it in 8. We're 100% converted over. So basically, the entire city has sewer availability. What else can we do? We need to control where our local runoffs are going into the river. We have baffle boxes on 100% of those outflows. So the next step is looking at even improving those outflows. Stuff like living shorelines and bioswales that filter the nitrogen phosphorus out of those water. Making residents know and be aware that every year during the rainy season, City of Stuart has a fertilizer ordinance. And that's something that, it came up the first 2 years I was in office. It wasn't, we didn't have a plan to broadcast. Just get it out there. Hey, rainy season's coming. It's a fertilizer ordinance. Please stop fertilizing your yard. So I and the other commissioners put that out there on social media. City of Stuart does. Just, it's there. And it's going to recur every year, but we need residents to know and do the right thing.
Absolutely. Meredith's clear. You're very passionate about the water. That is what you ran on the first time around, and clearly you followed up with that. Let me talk about a few other hot items right now. And one of the big ones is right down the street here, the Cube Smart building.
Yep.
So a lot of people, it's shocking when you come around the corner. It doesn't look like it fits in at this point. So tell us a little bit about that. So
people don't like change, but, I'm sure many Stuart residents have, built houses or had their neighbors build houses. Those houses, when they're built, they don't come before a commission. There's something called our land development code and our comp plan. Our comp plan stretches out into the future. It's our 40-year plan, so to say, of what areas and the plan for city's future. And that can be changed, but it's not easy to change it. Any changes go to the state level. The land development code is what happens if you want to adjust that code. You need to come before the commission, and typically before an advisory board, such as the local planning agency, which I served on for a year before running for commissioner. The other board, if you're in the CRA, is the CRB board, and both those boards are made up of volunteers. So if you want to do something out of code, you would need to consult with staff and go through either the CRA board or the LPA board and meet and present your project before residents of the City of Stuart, all volunteer. And after that would go before the City Commission. They're never going to deviate from the comprehensive plan, but they are allowed to deviate from the land development code. But, to touch on that storage facility, when you go and build a house, typically it's done with what it's called straight zoning. And straight zoning in our land development code, we have a 4-story height limit. Now, Not everywhere is going to be 4 stories, but that parcel over there, zone B1, it's right on US 1, across from US 1 where we are now,
Right.
and on down, there's 4-story buildings. That's in our comprehensive plan. So that's allowed. It's zoned for that. So, someone could go there and build straight zoning and build a 4-story building. Now, at times, I'd like to talk about the history of that parcel. At times, it might be advantageous in the name of smart growth to deviate from that. And that's why you have the commission and these boards. Prior to that storage facility being built, there was proposed to be a gas station there. I was on the LPA board for that. I did not support that gas station going in there, and nor did all the surrounding residents. I'm sure everyone knows that's called the hot right coming off US 1 onto Palm City Road
Right.
there. Cars can fly down that road, and you're going from US 1 over the bridge, and you're decreasing your speed. That's why those rumble strips are there. So a gas station, even though maybe it could have been built, logically is not a good solution there. You have a lot of cars going in and out where there's gas station. Understandably, when I was on the LPA, I spoke with a lot of the surrounding residents. They didn't want a gas station either. There's a lot of people at night going there, lights are on, all that stuff. So the commission's job is to figure out what's best for the city of Stuart. Understanding people don't like change, but a 4-story building can be built there, straight zoning. But working with the applicant and working with the surrounding residents, I bet no one probably knows, but behind that building, it's somewhat of a triangle shaped. Behind that building, one side is going to have a wall with a landscape buffer and different planting. The other side has a fence with different landscape buffer and different planting. Those 2 different buffers represent the interests of the closest residents. And I personally spoke with all those residents, and, I'll ask everyone out there, put it into your mind. Would you rather be living next to, a gas station, or maybe a high-end storage unit that could be built anyway? But if what we did was allow a little bit of variation on the ingress and egress, which is improved for traffic, because not only could that have been a storage unit, it could have been, say, office buildings where there's windows in the back looking down on those neighbors that are back there. They wouldn't have liked that. I don't think. I know I wouldn't have.
Right.
So right now you've got a high-end 4-story storage unit. There's no windows in the back looking in on the neighbors. The neighbors were supportive of it. And the different landscape buffers reflect the interests of the neighbors. But what I have to do as a commissioner, maybe many people believe or remember what happened in Martin County, where your and my tax dollars were spent settling a lawsuit. I can't sit up here and just stop people from building to code. That's the only way I can do that as a commissioner, is to spend your tax dollars buying that land. And I don't think it would be in the best interest of city residents to buy a triangle piece of parcel on US 1 at a hot right going onto Palm City Road. So for smart growth, my job is to work with the residents, work with the applicant, figure out what they want, and negotiate. That's the job of a commissioner, is to listen to the residents and steer the city, take all the facts and steer the city in the right direction.
Very good. I appreciate you giving us a very thorough explanation of the building. And of course, it's not done yet either. So we'll see what the paint color is and all that. That'll change, I'm
when
sure.
you see it all landscaped, and it will look like an office building on the outside.
So I have to ask you as well, what should happen with Old City Hall?
Well, the sky's the limit on that. First, we need to decide if we are going to move to Wells Fargo. So if you talk about Old City Hall, well, we're still there. But stuff has to happen in phases. Right now, we have not quite closed yet, but we are in a very good position to close on what I call, and most people would call, the Wells Fargo building and the adjacent shopping centers. And if you talk about, ways you could run the city like a business, making land acquisitions and taking advantage of incredibly low interest rates, and holding buildings where you have leased tenants in there to offset taxpayer dollars and tax expenses. But not only to do that, but to revitalize an area, to bring downtown, further down East Ocean, because City of Stuart, historic downtown, is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So you can't go too many places. But to revitalize an area that's across from your flagship park, and to consider having city control, say, over the largest parking lot in downtown Stuart, so that we can utilize that for events and stuff. So stuff can't just happen all at once. It has to happen in phases. Right now, we need to close on the Wells Fargo building, and we're still in negotiation with them about when they might move out, and that will all factor into our plan. The comforting thing for me is when we just decide what might happen if we move out of City Hall, is that that's going to go to a referendum for the voters to decide. We're going to propose a few things. We're going to have some workshops, but we're going to listen to the residents. Again, that's a city commissioner's job. And I'm thankful that there's a referendum for any sale or any major change of waterfront property. It'll go to a referendum of the residents. But, I ran on this, and many others have in the past, that city staff shouldn't be the only ones getting the full benefit of those beautiful views from City Hall of our river. That's something that is an untapped potential for all public benefit and all residents.
It is. It's certainly beautiful. Merritt, we're running out of time here, a couple minutes, but if we go over a little bit, we're going to continue on Facebook Live. So I have some questions. This is an important race. This is a really tough time for all our candidates. And again, we're speaking with Merritt Matheson. He's commissioner for Group 3 right now in Stuart. And it's a tough time to campaign. You can't go out and shake hands. You can't have the forums and have a bunch of people around. You can't have
parties, barbecues. City's not doing any, public permitted events, anything like that.
Super tough. So, if you support Merritt, he can definitely use your help. Yeah, I'm sure you're taking campaign funds.
I am.
Seeing your signs around town. So.
I am. People can look me up, www.mathesonforstuart.com. You can find out about my record, my bio, my family, and again, Facebook at Matheson for Stuart. Please look me up. Reach out to me. Give me a call. I'm City Commissioner. My cell phone number, 772-233-8406. My focus is supporting our local law enforcement, keeping your taxes down, not raising taxes this summer as we're going into a recession, preserving parks and land and public spaces. You could see that evidence with my decision and this turnaround city made on the Sailfish ball fields.
Absolutely. Merritt, I want to ask you a couple more questions. I think we're probably getting switched over to Facebook Live now.
Okay.
But your opponent, one of the biggest things he said is long-term planning is where he sees himself different from the current focus of the commission, where he thinks he could bring in a new